Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we're recording on a Friday, so I feel a little, a little ambitious. No, that's not the word I was looking for. Rambunctious is the word I was looking for. That laugh you heard was Sean. Welcome back, Sean.
All right. Good to be back.
Sean Gonsalves, the most mispronounced name at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, our communications team lead. We also have Rye, who keeps himself muted when he's laughing. Rye Marcatilio McCracken, our research team lead. Welcome to the show, Rye.
I've never been happier to be here, Chris.
All right. Rye has new pharmaceuticals. So we're talking about a kind of a grab bag of interesting things that are going on. And Sean, you're going to kick us off, I think, with some exciting news you wrote about in the state of the big city.
Yeah, the Big Apple, the state of the Big Apple. So they passed their budget bill for 2023. And a couple of weeks ago, we were a little concerned because there was language in the bill that seemed to indicate that the big telecom lobby had gotten to a lot of lawmakers. And there was language in there that appeared as if they were trying to squeeze out municipal broadband proposals and projects from as this cascade of money is coming from the federal government in the states. But the budget, thankfully, was amended and the bill looks pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it looks pretty darn good.
Yeah. It's $220 billion, which is
not all for broadband.
Not all for broadband. Right. Exactly. Not all for broadband, but $1 billion of it is for broadband, which is a significant amount, in comparison to some other states for sure.
Right. Governor Hochul advanced the Connect All initiative, which I know we've talked about in other contexts. I don't remember if we've talked about it on the old broadband bits, but it includes several different proposals that are pretty cool. But the one that we're most excited about is
a few things, but the municipal grant program was established.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, there's other stuff that's cool, but like that's
right. That's the big one. So, so there's a municipal grant program that they've established with this bill. Not all $1 billion that's going to the Connect All initiative will go to that, I'm sure, but the amount that will be in the municipal grant program hasn't yet been determined. But certainly, the big takeaway is that there's that provision and a few other provisions in the bill that create this municipal broadband ecosystem really in the state of New York, which is a major victory for community broadband.
Tell me more about this ecosystem.
Without going too far into what paragraph and what part and all that can get a little bit confusing, especially the way they name it. They have like part MMM and part JJ and FFF and all of this kind of stuff. But one of the things that the bill does is not only does it establish a municipal grant program, but it also gives permanent authority to the New York Power Authority to enter into lease agreements with municipalities and nonprofits, et cetera, to use their excess fiber capacity to build out fiber infrastructure. So that is very cool, especially since they've got 1,400 miles of transmission lines with fiber running along most of those pathways. And what it really does, when you think about it practically speaking, talking to folks on the ground over there, is you've got the DANK, which is I like that.
You had to say it.
Yeah, the DANK.
The DANK.
The Development Authority of North County. And then there's also the Southern Tier Network, which are nonprofit backhaul providers. But what this provision in the state budget allows for is for those two backhaul providers to interconnect and essentially create this just about a statewide middle mile network, which, of course, if you're a municipality anywhere close to that region, it means lots of savings in terms of building last mile fiber networks.
Yeah, and that's important for a number of reasons. But one is the ability of cities, others that would like to make investments to move quickly, because that fiber is out there and now they're making it available. That's pretty cool. We've talked less about some of the things that have also been done. But if people want, they can check out your story. It's on muninetworks.org. They can just check out, what the title of it is offhand?
New York State Budget Bill Sets Table for Municipal Broadband. Man,
there you go.
That's a great title, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's so good. You remembered it. So we are moving a little bit quickly today through a couple of different topics. But I mean, like that makes New York one of the coolest states, right? I mean, like, Vermont has almost entirely embraced municipal broadband as like its sole strategy, which is really cool. New York has like this cachet. It's New York, and for them to be putting so much money into municipal broadband, enabling these different business models, removing an unnecessary fee. This is going to be a positive podcast. We're not going to talk about the states that aren't getting it right. Now, I want to highlight a story that Rye had done. This is one that I thought was really great. Rye, why do you hate the for-profit companies?
That's a great question, Chris. I don't have a good answer for you there. So I threw up a story this week about the announcement by Comcast in January that it was going to expand its stock buyback program for 2022 to $10 billion. And we kind of use it as a time to remind people working in local government and doing this kind of community-driven broadband infrastructure work, especially over the next few years, that like Comcast, these monopoly ISPs, they're built and designed to return profits to shareholders and increase their market value and expand their stake in the marketplace, and not necessarily to build the most cost-efficient networks all around the country. So it's a good reminder when we're talking about all this public money that's floating out there and what people should do with it.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting. I specifically set it up in a way that I feel like I'm always annoyed when people set it up talking to me. We don't have a problem with for-profit companies. We work with a lot of for-profit companies. I have mad respect for a lot of local companies that are fighting it out and doing a good job of delivering a service. And most years making a profit, maybe some years not. I mean, it's stressful running those businesses. But these big companies, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, AT&T's profits, do you remember offhand what they were? Because like, it's like, has this been fact checked? Like, is that right?
$100 billion, right? And almost
My
$100
God.
billion.
Yeah, and I assume that's, because AT&T is now multiple business lines, so that's not like their broadband profits, but like right. Nonetheless, like it's just $100 billion in profits. And the part that, like, the reason that we wanted to write this is not to be like, hey, let's grab our pitchforks and torches, but to say how absurd is it that like we are showering these companies with taxpayer dollars now, right? Like AT&T has received billions of taxpayer, or in that case, USF funds is what I'm referring to, which is public money, we could say, rather than taxpayer dollars, because it's a fee in that case. But nonetheless, like, I think it's really, it's worth considering if we have a totally broken system, if we're writing like, what is that? 10-figure checks to companies who are then writing 10-figure and 11-figure checks to the stock market. Like it's remarkable.
Do we have ILSR branded pitchforks and torches? Is that something we get when we get hired on?
Rye just invented our next fundraiser. And so let me just say, if you think that we should do branded pitchforks, you should donate an odd amount of money to ilsr.org/donate and include in the note that we should do branded pitchforks and torches and see how our development people react to that, because I think they'd be pretty entertained. But make sure it's like some weird amount, like, like $27.68 or something. So anyway, I think it's really important. And then that was followed by a story that I think we should connect that I haven't taken the time to, which is the compensation of Frontier executives, Charter Spectrum executives. The cable and telephone monopoly executives tend to be among the most highly compensated among CEOs in of the Fortune 500 companies in the US. And that's pretty remarkable, I think, because these are also some of the most hated companies by their customers. Again, a sign that the market is broken.
Yeah, definitely especially in comparison to the average wage of their average worker, right? And that's only been going up and up and up and up over the last 15 years.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I mean, I always like to have a little bit of balance. This should be my new slogan. Chris Mitchell, a little bit of balance. The Comcast seems like it's a pretty good place to work. It didn't used to be for people on the lower end, and I think the customer service representative still may not appreciate like me saying that Comcast is a good place to work, but like I feel like a lot of people that I know say that Comcast has really improved, and that's true up and down the line more or less. Charter Spectrum much less so. So just throw that out there. I wanted to run something by all of you. We've now been joined by Deanne Cuellar. Thank you for joining, Deanne, our outreach team lead. And I wanted to run this by you because I really think that you and I are pretty simpatico in thinking about this. And I know that you're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. I just wish it wasn't every time I open my mouth. People are noticing that the federal government is taxing the grants that it is giving to the and the broadband subsidies to for-profit companies, and also some of the cooperatives are liable in certain business arrangements that they have for taxing. And so, if the federal government's giving you $100 to build broadband and then saying, "Give me $20 of that back," I think that's pretty dumb. Folks from American Enterprise Institute, for instance, and others say this is a preference for municipal broadband and for cooperatives. And I'm sort of like, yeah, they're right. Like, am I wrong to think that we should fight against this?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think that one of the questions that we often get is, what should I be doing to work on this issue? And we say, you got to talk to the decision makers. You have to get to them. And if people are paying attention, which they are right now, because they're calling it a waterfall, a watershed of federal resources, then this now needs to be added to your top line messages that this is a challenge. This is going to be a huge challenge. And so there is, I hope that what we saw with mayors joining together to reach the national level of policymakers, I think we're going to see something similar to that.
On this topic, then, I'm curious, and I want to open up to Ryan and Sean too, because I think this is something worth strategically talking about. Like, is it strategic to say, like, the federal government is like prioritizing municipal and cooperative networks? Like, let's just let it go. Or should we, I think I'm a little bit OCD on some of the stuff. Like, I want government to make sense. And so rather than just fighting for what gives us an edge, I kind of want policy to be rational and work, but I might be undermining our effort.
Yeah. Well, explain, because I'm with you.
Here we are complaining that AT&T and Comcast make too much money. The federal government's like, well, that's cool. We'll just tax them on all the money we're giving them. Is that a bad thing? Like, it's a terrible thing when it's a local company.
Well, I think that the taxing is one issue, but I think there's a second issue that is unfolding that could come out into the center and the mainstream soon, is now that more people know how the federal government has given the decision to the states to make a lot of these smaller decisions at the local level, I think local communities are going to realize how little power they have to advocate for their work and their funding. In one way, we're happy that the federal government is loosening rules or making rules where we need them. But then, like, when it gets down to the state level, it's kind of like we lose that power.
Because we're still getting overruled by the states. Right.
So it's like thank you and no thank you.
Yeah. Now I'm curious, Sean. Do you have any more of a reaction to this quandary about the?
No,
the
I'm kind of taking it all in. It kind of reminds me of don't like people that get unemployment benefits get taxed for that.
I think they can. I suspect it has to do with like what their income is over the course of the year. Like, if they have very little income, I'm guessing that it doesn't. But if they're, if I got laid off and then I got compensation for that, then I suspect I would have earned enough that I would be paying taxes back on it. I guess, we should probably talk to someone who knows what they're talking about. But like, this is a podcast, so I think we're statutorily prohibited from doing that.
Well, I'm also wondering if the tax decision was made because they saw how, like, some municipalities were taking the federal resources and putting them into savings. And maybe that's not what they planned on.
One of the reasons I'm so hot and bothered, and I really think that the federal government should get rid of this tax, is because it comes from 2017. And for people who are interested, from Keller and Heckman's Beyond Telecom blog, forget what it is. If people don't know who Keller and Heckman are, you're doing something wrong and you're listening to this show, because their news digests multiple times a week is just killer. But Casey Lied wrote about it. It was 2017. Republicans passed this tax bill. I remember watching it closely, and I was horrified because it was one of these things that both parties have been doing lately, which is, rather than vetting legislation, what if we just don't do anything for months, and then we all get together and a few people that are handpicked by leadership talk to lobbyists and a few stakeholders, and then they come up with a bill and nobody gets to read it and we vote on it. Wouldn't that be a good idea? And they started taxing co-ops. And there's all kinds of things that they did that were screwed up. And one of the things that they did was Republicans made it that broadband was taxable. Broadband grants were taxable. So this is something that Congress changed about IRS regulations. And so it wasn't really related to broadband at that time, and it was before these broadband bills. But now we're in a situation where, because Congress doesn't take its job seriously, we're now 20 cents on the dollar has to go back to the Treasury for the broadband grants to for-profit companies, and again to some co-op structures and their partnerships. So I don't know. I feel like it's worth talking about. I thought it'd be an interesting kind of weird little conversation. There's another thing that I'm curious about, because all four of us think about our work with a racial equity lens and how to improve it. And I don't know how many people have seen my back and forth with Larry Irving the other night on Twitter. Larry Irving, I think, is a constantly a strong reminder that when I talk about how we should be giving money to the states and that we need more local power, he's like, hey, that's pretty cool. That's how we got segregation. That's how we got Jim Crow. There's a whole lot of problems with the idea of states' rights. And I never like being criticized or disagreed with. So it's always hard, but he's right. I mean, he makes a good point. And I think it's something that we need to reflect on. But I am curious about that, because I also feel like there is no progress at the federal level on broadband that I can tell, in part because of the FCC history. And I say that I don't want to upset people at NTIA who are doing a good job and have resources finally. But historically, the federal government hasn't been doing a whole lot to help out the poor, low-income communities that are predominantly Black families, Latino families, tribal families. So I feel like we should go to the local level. And I don't know if any of you have a reaction to that.
I mean, it's just a reminder, and with the tax on the broadband grants, it's a especially good reminder that it kind of mixes two different things that are going together here, right? And I'm not a tax expert here, but you're taking what is essentially a policy decision. You're saying, here's how much it will cost to solve the broadband problem, and we're willing to expend tens of billions of public dollars towards that end. And then you're turning around and you're mixing it with this idea that we should tax these projects because they create a value that needs to be returned to the public good in some way. But we've already made the decision at the top that we get all these benefits from building these broadband networks. And the return on investment there is not only monetarily, more than 1-to-1, but we get all sorts of other benefits from improving our internet infrastructure. And so you're kind of mixing apples and oranges here.
Anyone else want to tell me about fruit?
No, I'm just taking it all in.
Worst podcast guest ever.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm taking it. I'm supposed to have some hot take immediately. But just thinking about states' rights and kind of the sordid history associated with that term and some of the policies that have been put forward under that banner. This is one of these things where I'm kind of getting lost in the nuances of
well, Sean, let me put it to you directly then, right? A lot of us feel like the states have, for my lifetime, have been more or less irrelevant, right? Everyone goes to the federal level to make policy. The states kind of enacted a bit. It's kind of left over. Our work, has been to say the federal government screwed this up so many times. We need to trust the states, and we need the states to learn how to walk. We need the states to get active. And that's betting on the idea that we won't have states that are going to go out there and screw over half their population or a quarter of their population or something. But I think we're going to see that. The question is that better than seeing the federal government do nothing when we see some states rocketing forward and some states going backwards?
There were things that they could have done at the federal level, like get rid of the state preemption stuff, which would have prevented a lot of that kind of stuff. But I think you have to kind of look at it as what is what were the actual alternatives. It was are we going to do another RDOF, or is the money going to get closer at least to the localities that really understand where the connectivity challenges are? So in that sense, handing it over to the states by and large, I think is probably better than what we saw with RDOF and some of the other reverse auctions that the federal government has done. But it isn't ideal in the sense that it would have been better actually if they had just sort of, established these grant programs that municipalities could directly apply for to the federal government. That would have been better.
I agree. Yeah, because when we're talking about Black and brown communities and very poor communities that really could benefit from this once in a lifetime opportunity for community infrastructure, there are just too many states that are not going to center equity. They're not going to. And I'm not going to name a state, but I could name a very big state that's already proving that.
That's all around you.
That's
the question, right? When you have an indifferent state, more or less, or even a negatively inclined state, perhaps for certain populations, and you have a federal government that's ineffective, which is more likely to trickle resources out to the populations that need it?
Well, also there's this other nuance or this other fruit, right? So if we're talking about apples and oranges, is the digital discrimination work that has been kicked off, right? Fast forward, I think that they were like, we'll codify discrimination. That's great. But even if we codify discrimination tomorrow and that gets down to the state level, one, it's like you have to prove that discrimination exists. And like, I'm sure Raya has like insight into the academia of this, but that's still kicking the can so far down the road that really the impact is going to be very little. And I'm someone that's for codifying digital discrimination. I'm just not sure like how much of an impact that's going to have on local communities down the road.
Yeah. Well, these are the sorts of things we're wrestling with. If anyone came here for answers, we just give you some more questions maybe. And we're going to cut it off there because I have to go talk to one of the lovely people that is making it possible for us to have tribal broadband boot camps and talk with them about our plans. And so I don't want to be late for that. Thank you each for coming on and chatting on an impromptu basis.
As always, it's fun.
Thanks for having us, Chris. Good to be here.
Thanks.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.